So this is our first trot pole exercise. We'll try and show you roughly in the order that I did each exercise. So I start, half of them are raised and half are non-raised. So I always start with the poles that aren't raised first. So I started on the circle. Then you can come up and down the centre line. There's lots of different lines you can do. You can go across any diagonals. So like there, I went over half that were raised. Going back down the centre now with the middle pole is raised, but you don't have to have that raised if you don't want. Then I think I'm going to come up the other diagonal like that. So I do all of these first because they're not raised, and then I would build up to doing this nearer the end of the session, the raised poles on a circle. It's actually a lot more difficult than it looks. I thought it was going to be fairly straightforward, but my other horses struggled. Zeb found it quite easy. It was a very good exercise, and it was good because you can start with the non-raised first and then build up to raised. Then, although it's a trot pole exercise, I added in just some canter to show you sort of the things you could do. So I started by cantering, and I did a simple change through the middle of the raised pole and the edge of that triangle pole. Now, Zeb is quite experienced, so does simple changes a lot. If you had a younger horse, what you could do is do a trot transition in the middle and re-pick them up to canter. Then I built it up to doing a bit of counter canter. So again, this depends. He's quite experienced and does counter canter a lot. But if your horse does, this is quite a good exercise to do, to go through the middle, stay on that same lead and go on to counter canter, and then come back through the middle and go back onto the correct lead. So I did that on both reins. And then I built it up to doing a flying change through the middle. So again, with most of my horses, I wouldn't do that, but with something as experienced as him, I did. I then, once you've had a canter, you can then go back and have a trot through, through the poles, up and down the centre, down through the, on the circle. So our second exercise is another trot pole exercise. So we start by just having a trot through the triangle, which is quite simple. You can stay on a circle. You can do a bit of a figure of 8 over the triangle. So that's quite a nice way to start the horses, just to start introducing the trot poles. That's quite easy. You then can come down the centre, which is obviously a lot more difficult. Now we have got quite a few of them raised. You can do them not raised at all. You can start with them on the floor, and then if you have a helper to raise them up for you, we're quite fortunate that we've always got someone on the ground so they can raise them up. So we're just going up and down here, just showing you what you can do. You can go across the diagonal like that, which is quite a nice one. You could do that before going down the centre of your horses and as used to doing some pole work exercises. And then we've got this going across this diagonal. Now that's actually quite difficult because they've really got to stretch to reach the correct stride. So you've got 4 there, and we've got 2 raised and 2 not raised. Once you've done all of this, now this is a lot more difficult to do, and you don't have to do it. And as you can see there, Todd actually got it wrong the first time, put in a little extra step. Doesn't really matter as long as they're just trying to figure out where they're putting their feet. So this is basically doing a 10-metre circle, going into the triangle and out over the 3 raised poles. And you can do this on both reins. We'll show you on the left rein again in a minute. There you go, on the left rein. So this is quite difficult. I would have done all the other pole work exercises first, and I would do this at the end of a session. And make sure, if your horse struggles to trot even just a 10-metre circle without the poles, I would make sure they can do that before doing this, because this is quite difficult, but it's quite a good exercise to keep them supple and keep them moving around and concentrating where you want them to go. And of course, if you didn't have the poles raised, it would be easier. And then I'm starting to cool off Todd here, so you can then go back, have a trot up and down the centre, really make sure they're listening. I was letting Todd have a long and low. He's long and low here, trotting through across the diagonal on a circle. So this is a really good exercise to keep your horses thinking and concentrating. Exercise 3 is 4 canter poles in a straight line. So we start by just trotting over the 4 canter poles. And the distance is about 9 feet apart, which is 3 steps. I'm going to put all of the distances in the description below. So we trot them both on both reins just to get your horse happy, comfortable, staying the rhythm in a straight line. You can trot them as many times as you like. Then we go up to canter, and we come and canter down the 4 canter poles again on both reins, and you're just trying to keep them in the same rhythm, keeping them straight. If they drop to trot or get them wrong, don't worry, just keep going around, keep doing them until you get it correctly. Then once we've done them on both reins, we raise them. So as you could see there, the 2 middle poles have been raised, just one side to begin with, and again we do that as many times. And if your horse is a little bit green or is struggling, you don't need to raise them. You can just do the 4 canter poles, or you could just raise a couple and not all of them. So then we're coming back round, and now we're going on the left rein. And we're cantering them again with just the 2 middle. He actually knocked the second part, so I just come round and do it again, and then he stays a little bit calmer. He was getting quite excited because we don't really do canter poles or canter raised poles. So once you've raised the 2 middle ones, you then raise the 2 outer ones as well. And we've then raised the 2 middle ones to being straight. You can obviously vary this, and you don't need to raise all of them. You could raise all of them just one-sided. We decided to raise the first 2 one-sided and then the 2 in the middle level. And then we'll come round and do the same on the other rein, which, as you can see, was just getting a little bit excited. He was enjoying himself. So I think we're going to just come round and do that once more, just because he got a little bit overexcited, didn't stay over his back. So I'm just trying to keep him in a nice rhythm, and then that one was better. And then to finish, or in between you cantering the poles, you can then trot the poles again, but with them raised.